All right, everybody. What I'm going to be doing is reading some questions and answers about Hurricane Matthew. Hurricane Matthew is being described as wet, wild, and weird. Meteorologists say its path has been harder to pin down than that of other storms, but Matthew is definitely dangerous and may possibly stick around in the southeast coast for a week or so. So here's some questions and answers about Matthew. How bad and unusual is this? If Matthew keeps its current status as a major hurricane with winds of 110 miles per hour or more as a Category 3 or higher, it will be the first major hurricane to make landfall in the United States since Wilma in October of 2005. Wilma's winds at landfall were at 120 miles per hour. Earlier that year, Katrina hit with winds of 125 miles per hour. As of 8 p.m. on Wednesday, Matthew's maximum sustained winds were 115 miles per hour, down a tad from 5 p.m. That can make Matthew the first major U.S. hurricane of the social media era. Twitter and iPhones didn't exist when Wilma hit, and Facebook was just in its infancy. Superstorm Sandy in 2012 caused more than $50 billion in damage. That's with a B. But even if it hit the coast as a hurricane, it would have qualified only as a Category 1 with peak winds of 85 miles per hour. Storm surge, large size, and location were the big problems. It was also a combination of 3 different types of storm systems, so it isn't a good comparison. The last hurricane with a similar strength and track to threaten the U.S. East Coast was 1999's Hurricane Floyd, which caused about $7 billion in damage in the Carolinas, says Jeff Masters, a former hurricane hunter, meteorologist, and director of Weather Underground. There's no question that it's going to have major impacts, he says, and it's going to be devastating or just major damaging. He said that depends. A few degrees difference is the hard to forecast track as it hugs that coast can make a difference between a $1 billion storm and a $10 billion one. Now, here's another question that many of you are asking yourselves. Doesn't matter if it makes landfall or stays just offshore. In some ways, the worst case scenario would be if the storm's eye stays just offshore, enabling it to feet over water and avoid weakening while its strongest hurricane winds keep smacking the beaches, says University of Miami tropical meteorology researcher Brian McNulty, who just finished his own storm preparations. In that case, you're raking hundreds of miles of coastline. And don't think of it as just an eye. This storm already is so large and likely to expand even more that it will have widespread impacts. Technically, a storm doesn't make landfall until its eye reaches land, but it can still be considered a direct hit if it's close enough to the shore to have maximum winds over land, even if the eye stays just over water. Here's another question that you may be asking yourself right now. So which is the big worry with Matthew? Is it wind, rain, or the storm surge? While storm surge and rain can be a problem, McNulty and Masters worry most about Matthew's winds. It's going to do a lot of wrecking, Masters says. Matthew will get big and bad. Another question you might be asking yourselves. Is Matthew harder to forecast than other storms? And if so, how come? Emmanuel and Masters says this is harder to forecast. Some computer models have changed long-term tracks up from the East Coast into New England a couple days ago to now possibly lingering around the southeast. But McNulty points out the turn due north between Haiti and Cuba was well forecasted, and only the long-term forecasts greatly gyrate, which is more understandable. As for those short-term track forecasts, the changes are only more noticeable because they are so close to land that 50 to 75 miles one way or another makes a huge difference. And last question. I know this has been brought up today and tonight as many of you out on the East Coast may be boarding up your homes, maybe helping others in need right now, but many of you want to know, what's to blame? Is this El Nino, global warming, or do hurricanes just happen? Mostly hurricanes simply just happen. However, warm water fuels these storms, and the water in the Caribbean, where Matthew has been growing, is 1.8 to 2.7 degrees warmer than its long-term average. The meteorologists say. Master says that makes climate change a possible factor, although McNulty and Emmanuel disagree. Maximum potential intensity, a key measurement of heat energy in the ocean, has increased by 15 miles per hour in the past 35 years in the areas of the Atlantic where tropical storms spawn. We hope you enjoyed that